What is up, my Lorcana Goons, and welcome back to the Lorcana Goons channel. My name is Kevin, and we're going to go over 15 plus decks that you can use starting this weekend as Archazia's island hits local game stores, and we enter the new format. So now we're finally going to get to see how powerful dual ink colors really are, alongside some of these new meta strategies. So here we have a couple decks ready to use at your local game store starting this Friday. So we're going to start off with this blue-yellow puppy deck. If you like this deck and you want to support the channel, remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you're a Lorcana Goons. But this is the idea that I've had so far with how to play a puppy deck going into the new format. I call this 13 dogs. It should be called 17 dogs because we're playing Stitch New Dog alongside the 13 Dalmatian puppies as our 1 and 2 cost characters. Maybe on turn 1 you want to play Popsicle or Canine Crunchies instead, and you can follow that up with sail the Azurite Sea into a Flavor Sham if you need some draw power. But we're also playing the Thunderbolt, the Wonder Dog. This is a puppy shift 3, so there's scenarios where on turn 1 we play Canine Crunchies, turn 2 we play a Dalmatian puppy, and turn 3 we can shift onto Thunderbolt, maybe sing Let It Go that same turn. There's also a world where you play How Far Will Go in this deck so that you can utilize those shift lines as well. Playing a Thunderbolt on turn 3, he's a 3/7 character that can quest for 2. That's pretty strong. So he has Bodyguard. At first, I was kind of going for more like an aggro route with this deck, but then I kind of started realizing that you can kind of just control the early game pressure with your puppies and your ability to generate advantage from Popsicles and stuff like that. It might not be the most competitive deck in the meta, but I think this is the way I would go about trying to build it. Being able to have Popsicle in the discard pile for Tamatoa or even Canine Crunchies. Even just having an extra item in the discard to grab back from Tamatoa is pretty cool. I like that this Tamatoa came out because now it feels like Sapphire can be played with a variety of different decks, and all you have to do is have this Flavor Sham Popsicle package in your deck, and now your Tamatoa is going to have a lot of targets in the discard pile by the time you get to turn 6. Probably the best combo to play is Shift into Rockstar Stitch so that your puppies will draw you a card every time you play them. There's also a situation where you play Lantern in this deck so you can get into that Rockstar Stitch earlier. Still got to do some testing with the blue-yellow puppy deck. I'm not sure how competitive it will be, but on the curve you can play some pretty powerful cards, and a lot of your characters quest for 2. We have the Perditas that quest for 2, the Thunderbolts, your Rockstar Stitch, your Pongos, and of course Tamatoa. He's a pretty big body on turn 6, 4, 5. Will grab us back to Popsicle so we have some consistent draw power, and then that'll let us quest for 2 as well. Next up, we have a Ruby Steel Mulan deck. Check this out. This deck is going to take advantage of the new Mulan cards that are coming out in this set, like the Mulan Soldier, the 1 cost character, the Sky Soldier that has 2 strength, 1 willpower, and when you play this character, you can draw a card and discard a card. This card opens up some cool shift lines with the Mulan Elite Archer, so I do feel like if you're playing this type of deck, your opponent has to respect that you can shift Mulan Elite Archer on turn 5. Then we have the new Mulan Imperial Guard shift. That's another shift 5 target. We were playing a couple of these right here. This Mulan has evasive. So there's a world where your opponent gets greedy with a Maui Shark and you can punish them for that. And on top of that, it'll give your other characters the ability to possibly challenge ready characters this turn. What I really like about this deck, though, is that we're able to play a decent amount of Uninkables now because this Mulan acts as a cycle card, as a filter. Kind of like the way Simba Future King works in a lot of Sapphire Steel decks. You're able to discard dead Uninkables. I've seen people use this with a Whole New World, but personally, I don't want to play this deck with a Whole New World. I feel like there's not a lot of draw power. So a lot of people want to gravitate to using Whole New World, but that could be a little rough in this coming meta. I feel like you really don't want to use Whole New World against opposing Sapphire Steel decks or Sapphire Ruby decks for the most part. So I'm trying to stay away from Whole New World, and instead I'm playing for Dock as our main draw engine. Drawing multiple docks is pretty bad, but when you have this Mulan that lets you draw and discard a card, there is a world where you discard excess docks from your hand, right? The new Li Shang can challenge ready characters, which makes Medallion Weights really good. Medallion Weights is more draw power for your deck, and you have Li Shang, you have One Last Hope, which will let you damage ready characters. I really like Break Free. This is a 1 cost action that I've really enjoyed in some Ruby builds that have Maui Shark because it'll basically give your Maui Shark rush that turn. All you have to do is deal 1 damage to it. And it's not just Maui Shark you can use it on, obviously. You can use it on your Mushu. You can set up plays where you have Mushu on board already, but you give rush to one of your other characters like Big Sisu or maybe even Smee. Also playing 2 copies of Gontu in this deck and 3 copies of Pete. I feel like if you're playing this type of deck, you're gonna get got by like Be Prepared cards, like heavy actions, even maybe some stuff like Grab Your Swords, Let It Goes. So playing Pete is really powerful, but playing Gontu as a follow-up might be, just as powerful, if not more. The new Gontu may not have the same effect as Pete, which will stop your opponent from playing any actions next turn, but it will stop your opponent from singing any songs. So there's a world where you stop them from singing their Whole New World if they're playing like a Sapphire Steel deck or something, and it'll make your opponent pay 2 more per action and item that you have to play next turn. So it also works for yourself, by the way. So we are playing items, so maybe you want to play play this Gantu after you've set up your items. If not, your items are going to cost 2 more. But against those item mirror match decks, right, you're going to be able to slow the game down a little bit by stopping them from singing, making them pay more for their actions and their items as well. One Last Hope is another way to attack readied characters. Fan the Flame is going to let you basically attack multiple characters at once. Goofy to gain some extra lore. Maui Strike for that pressure. And the new Mushu. The new Mushu's added to this deck because there is a world where we can slap this and make some good trades and start gaining lore from challenging, right? Don't know how competitive this deck is going to be, but I like where this is going. I like that we're finally kind of building some playable Ruby Steel decks. At least that's what it feels like. Here is a really cool blue-green Sapphire Emerald deck by Liam and Bradley. Check out their YouTube. Check out their Twitch. Love to see them streaming. Bradley especially. He's a young dude in the Lorcana space that does very well in tournaments, and I don't even think he's 13 yet. But he's been building this blue-green deck and showcasing how good it is on their channel, and I really like the direction they're going with the build, so I have to feature it. If you're playing blue-green, if you believe in the Bleen dream still and you want to play Emerald Sapphire, this might be the way you want to go. Personally, I like the way this build looks. We have Tipo and Clarabelle in the early game in case you need to play a 1-cost character for some aggro decks, or you want to play Tipo for the ramp. Obviously, we're playing 4 copies of Sail for that extra ramp because we want to play into our Grandmas and our Muses on turn 3. What's really cool is that we're taking advantage of this universal shift mechanic with the Baymax Giant Robot. There's a world where you play Tipo on turn 2. You ink, you get to ink again, so you have 4 ink next turn, and you shift your big Baymax onto your little Tipo, and that lets you sing How Far I'll Go, which is very powerful. It'll also let you sing a bunch of other songs like Strike a Good Match, Heffalumps and Woozles, and if you already have a Muses on board, then you're going to be able to trigger that. Probably one of the coolest new additions to this deck, though, is going to be Sapphire Coil. Everybody's worried about Sapphire Coil because of Ruby Sapphire, but let's not forget that Emerald Sapphire can also abuse Sapphire Coil. Every time you ink, you're going to be able to lower an opposing character's strength by 2. This means your Calhouns, your Smees, your Lawrences, they're all going to go down to less than 2 strength, which means they're in perfect range for something like Muses to get taken advantage of. And we're playing a gang of songs. We have How Far I'll Go, You're Welcome, Strike a Good Match, Heffalumps and Woozles. Even Under the Sea, all of these will trigger the Muses. And in case your opponent's going a little too fast for you and you need to slow them down because it is a Sapphire deck, we have cards like John Silver, the Alien Pirate, which will give an opponent Reckless when he's played and every time he quests, which is really important. 6-cost Genie, which is a bounce character, which is really nice. And the 7-cost Peter Pan, the Neverland Prankster Peter Pan. He's a 7-cost inkable emerald card, 4 strength, 6 willpower that says this character enters play exerted. While this character is exerted, however, neither player can gain lore unless they challenge first. So this will stop your opponent from gaining lore from their locations at the beginning of the turn. This will also put your opponent in some interesting situations where they have to challenge before they trigger their lucky dime, which means they might even have to only challenge into this Peter Pan, which might be their only target for lucky dime, possibly slowing down a Tamatoa / Ariel 1-turn kill. I have high hopes for blue-green in this set. I know a lot of players do. Notice how they're not playing Ink Geyser. That's a card that I think it needs to be tested a lot more. It's a card that I think is a little gimmicky, kind of cheesy. But I do think that with the new cards like Emerald Coil, Sapphire Coil, Muses in combination with this, it makes this deck a lot more viable in the meta, especially because you can resolve Bend to My Will a lot easier. Bend to My Will being the 7-cost uninkable card that says each opponent discards their entire hand. And this is really easy to set up when you have Muses and a variety of songs that bounce back to hand or characters that bounce back to hand like Genie, You're Welcome, stuff like that. And we have to mention the Clarabelle shift line. Clarabelle is overpowered in this deck. It's really easy to get rid of your entire hand. We're not even playing Fishbone anymore because you can just get rid of your hand by inking twice with Tipo, using up actions, or even using You're Welcome to get rid of cards on the board from the opponent, and then your opponent has a bigger hand size all of a sudden for your Clarabelle to get more value off. And next up, what we've all been waiting for, this is a Sapphire Steel list by the man himself, RMB, one of the true kings of blue steel. I love the way this list looks, by the way. It looks extremely consistent. We're literally playing 30 characters and 30 non-characters in this deck, so half the deck is not even characters. Half the deck is either items or actions and stuff like that, and the other half is going to be all these wonderful characters. We don't have a single 1-drop character. On turn 1, we're either playing Popsicle or Fortisphere. Then you want to play Smee on turn 2, or maybe a Sail. No Tipo. Doesn't look like we need Tipo anymore in this deck. There's also a world on turn 1 where you open up Popsicle plus Belle, the new inventor, the apprentice inventor, actually. She's a character that lets you pop your own Popsicle or Fortisphere on turn 1 and lets you play her for free. This means that on turn 2, you have a 3-cost character to sing any of the following cards. Let the Storm Rage on, Strength of a Raging Fire, even 1 jump ahead if you're playing something like that, right? Really what this does, though, is that it gives gives you a 3 strength and 3 willpower character on the board within the first 2 to 3 turns, which really was the big drawback for Sapphire decks. Sapphire decks were getting blown out of the water by like early aggro decks, you know what I mean? Maleficent, Lilo, plus Donald, Bodyguard, Blue. All those cards I mentioned, they get banished by Bell now. So this deck, these Sapphire decks can play a 3 strength, 3 willpower character on turn 1 to stop your aggro decks. And if that wasn't bad enough, this character can sing Storm Rage on, Strength of a Raging Fire, etc., etc. After you've successfully landed this Bell plus me combo on turns 1 and 2, on turn 3, you can safely sing some songs, maybe play a Maurice's Workshop to set up your item plays next turn. Scrooge McDuck is going to let you find even more items when you play him, and he's a 4-cost character that can sing Along Came Zeus. If you're ramping with Fishbone Quill, then you're going to get to your Tamatoas, and I say Tamatoas in plural because this deck plays multiple Tamatoas. We have Tamatoa So Shiny and Tamatoa the Happy as a Clam. So using cards like Fishbone Quill are going to let you ramp into them really easily. Surprised we're not playing Simba or Mulan in this deck, so you can discard some of the uninkables in your hand, but Fishbone Quill will probably do that for us as well. 2 copies of Lucky Dime in this deck because we can always grab it back from the discard pile with our Tamatoas. And I really want to talk about Maurice's Workshop. This is a 3-cost uninkable item that lets you draw a card every time you play an item as long as you pay 1 ink. So now your Popsicles, your Fortis Spheres, they're going to let you draw 2 cards every single time you play them, assuming you want to pay that extra ink. But it's going to be pretty easy to land these on the board when you have the new Tamatoa, Happy as a Clam, because when you quest with that Tamatoa, you can play these items for free, letting you set up your Lucky Dime, your Fishbone Quill, or your Maurice's Workshop at a way cheaper cost. Is this going to be the best deck of the format? We don't know yet, but I would definitely put Sapphire Steel in tier 1. Don't know what's going to be tier 0. Don't know if it's like a tier 0 meta where this is the best deck. But if there's going to be like a series of best decks, this is for sure going to be in that category. This is up there. The ability to ramp into some hefty cards with like great stats like 5-8 Tamatoa or 4-5 Tamatoa or even 4-4 Scrooge McDuck, right? Extremely powerful, and I don't think you should undervalue that. So be on the lookout for this deck starting this Friday. Here is a different blue steel list from Harlan Sweet. If you don't know him, go check out his YouTube channel. He has some videos on it breaking down on why this is the way you should probably be playing blue steel. As you can tell, neither build is playing Whole New World, actually. Just like I was saying with the other decks, I don't think Whole New World is the way to go in this meta, especially if we're thinking Ruby Sapphire is going to be one of the best decks still. But I like this version of blue steel. It's a lot less item and action heavy, and it's way more character oriented. We did see a list like this doing very well last format, also basically created by Harlan Sweet, so that's really cool to see that he's bringing back his Kiwi deck into the new format, and it's looking pretty powerful. Like we were saying, you can start off turn 1 by playing a 3-cost character like Belle. We are playing the Mulan here, so you can filter some of those cards, but it's looking like we're playing more uninkables and way more characters, and you want to be able to discard some of these uninkable characters like Calhoun, Alice. Maybe you have some uninkable actions in your hand that you don't want, but plenty of ways to control the early game with your high strength characters like Calhoun and Smee, and then on turns 3 you can play Alice, maybe Benja or John Silver to stop your opponent from challenging. Pete Game Jeffrey is going to be there to stop Be Prepared and other actions. Flavor Sham, mandatory draw power is what it feels like. Pluto Guard Dog in this deck I think is going to be very strong. He lands on the board as a 5 strength, 5 willpower character, which could be problematic, but like we've been saying, there's going to be a lot of steel. There's going to be a lot of Sapphire Steel from what it looks like, so you're going to want to be able to play cards like Storm Rage on, Strength of a Raging Fire, so you can deal damage to these Plutos, these Lawrences, and making them go back down to 1 strength. And both lists were playing McDuck Manor, as far as I can see, so be on the lookout for a McDuck Manor in your local meta. Personally, if you're playing something like Ruby, keep those Mauis in your deck. I feel like McDuck Manor has been making waves, huge waves since last format, and I wouldn't be surprised if Sapphire Steel players adapt it into adding into their deck too. We cannot forget about Amethyst Steel, one of my personal favorite decks going into the new format. This is probably how I'm going to play the deck too. We have a bunch of 1-drops, as you can see, Chernobog Followers, Diablo, Broom, and 1 Goons. You don't have to play the 1 copy of Goons. That's just the Lorcana Goons special over here. Maybe you want to add a 4 Diablo or a 4 Magic Broom there. On turn 2, you probably want to play Snake, especially if they're playing a Bell on turn 1 against you now. But if you don't have Snake, you can contest that opposing Bell with Calhoun or Mr. Smee. I am playing 4 Doc in this build. I've always been a big fan of 4 Doc in this type of deck. We're not playing any of the 1-cost Maleficent because I want to keep the uninkable count kind of low. I do think Maui Shark is going to be huge in the meta still, alongside stuff like the Tamatoas we were talking about or the Scrooge McDuck. So I want to make sure that I'm main decking Along Came Zeus, and with that we have to play a variety of 4-cost characters, the 2 Pluto Guard Dog, 2 Rabbit, to make sure we have some lingering cards that are draw power against the Ruby Sapphire decks, 4 Merlin and 4 Genie, which are just pretty aggressive, right? And they can also sing Zeus, which is very important. But really, the card I want to talk about is this Giant Cobra, this new illusion character that has vanished, a 3-cost 4/4 willpower character that is inkable. Only quest for 1, but when you play this character, you can discard a card, gain 2 lore. Very strong in my opinion. So many times in this deck do you have uninkables in your hand that you just don't want. Half the time you get double docks, or you get like Dog Genie and they don't synergize correctly. So having this Giant Cobra means you can pitch one of your undesirable cards to the discard pile, and it's like you played a Gathering Wisdom and Knowledge, or you played a Goat Bounce or something. And sometimes this might even just net you the ending of the game, you know what I mean? I was playing White Flower in this deck for so long last format, and this probably replaces White Flower. You know, it doesn't gain you the 1 lore guaranteed on play. But there's a lot of times where you're going to trigger this ability to gain 2 lore by discarding, and its stats is really strong. 3-cost 4/4 will contest most things in the meta. Yeah, obviously it's going to lose out to an opposing like Fire the Cannons or something silly like Improvise and whatnot. But if your opponent is using a 1-to-1 card to just out your Giant Cobra, I think that's pretty good. I still think that's some pretty good value right there. But yeah, this is how I would play the deck. Obviously, there's some different changes you can make to adapt to the meta. Maybe you want to play the new Queen, the new Jealous Queen, which will let you possibly gain 3 to 4 lore. Maybe there's a world where you don't play any locations. I personally still like locations though. Maybe there's a world where you play no Zeus, more Zeus. You know, the ratios can change for sure. But I do think Purple Steel, Amethyst Steel is going to be a deck that we need to respect in the upcoming meta. And if you guys have been following the channel for a while, you know that I am a Ruby Amethyst enjoyer at heart. And Ruby Am right now doesn't have the most highest of hopes. I see a lot of doomer energy around the Ruby Amethyst community. Fellow Ruby Amethyst enjoyers are dropping this deck coming into the new format because they do believe it's going to be really hard to combat the new Sapphire Steel meta or the new Ruby Sapphire meta. So if you're a Ruby Amethyst enjoyer, maybe consider trying some stuff out. Again, I haven't tested like the whole meta yet. I've just been testing with friends and whatnot. I still think Ruby Am is playable. This is how I would play it going into the new format, though. A couple different changes here from what I guess a lot of people are really used to. 2 copies of Raja. I want to test this card out. I feel like against Amber Steel decks or against like the low to the ground Steel decks, even aggro decks, Raja is the card you need. It's a 2-cost character that you can play on turn 2 that has 3 strength and 3 willpower. Yes, it has vanished, so it will lose out to Storm Rage on, Strength of Raging Fire. So it doesn't necessarily solve the problem of Cinderella Ballroom Sensation on turn 1, but what this does do is stop like the hyper aggro problem. If your opponent plays a Bell on turn 1 and they don't have a song, then you can respond with this Raja on turn 2. At least you're contesting the Bell and you're stopping them from gaining free lore willy-nilly. Oftentimes when you're playing this deck, the turn 2 play was to go Flynn Rider on turn 2, but I do not want to play Flynn Rider anymore if everyone in the room is going to be playing Popsicle turn 1, Bell turn 1. That means my Flynn Rider is never going to go off. There's a world where your Sisu Warrior will trigger the Flynn. However, that Flynn is probably just going to be bait for Storm Rage on, Strength of a Raging Fire, because there's going to be way more Sapphire Steel in the meta. Really, the changes that we made here were to add 2 Prince Eric, which I think is really good in this coming up meta. Prince Eric is going to have an ability that says when this character is banished, you may banish chosen character. So you can banish an opposing character, banish your own character, but really what this does is it makes Steel matchups a lot more winnable in my opinion. It's a 2 strength, 2 willpower character, and oftentimes this is going to stop the opponent from playing too many Tinkerbells, stuff like Grab Your Sword. It'll stop your opponent from questing with certain characters because you can get a decent value trade and then still pop another character. One of my favorite plays though is to go Prince Eric on turn 4 and turn 5 you play Elsa the Fit Spirit. You can exert an opposing character, crash your Prince Eric into that character and pop something you choose, sometimes even a Maui Shark, which is really good. And then we gotta talk about the Queen Jealous Beauty. This is a 4-cost character, 4 strength, 3 willpower, which is pretty good in my opinion because it avoids a lot of the Medusa stat situation. Has an ability that says exert, choose 3 cards from an opponent's discard pile and shuffle them or put them to the bottom of the deck actually. Then you gain 3 lore. If you put a princess this way, you gain 4 lore instead. So it has some burst lore potential. There is a world where both you and your opponent are playing a grind game, and you can play this towards the end of the game, and they don't have an out to it because they need to have Ice Block already in order for it to be a target for Medusa. They need to have Coil already in order for it to be a target for Brawl. And if they're not playing like the removal stuff, or if they don't have any removal, then it's inevitable. You're going to gain that 3 to 4 lore, which is very powerful in a deck where you can just play Goat Bounce, right? But like I was saying, I don't know how good Ruby Am is going to be in the new meta. I am a big Ruby Am fan, so I know I'm just coping. I do want to try certain cards in this build, like Castle again. I think locations might be really good if you can play Be Prepared and Sisu Shift, Sisu type stuff. But there also is a world where this deck just does not compete in the meta. So if you are a Ruby Amethyst enjoyer, maybe practice some other decks to see how you like those in case this one might not be that good going into the new format. Remember, guys, I'm going to put all these deck lists in the description below. If you guys want to see them yourself, you're more than welcome to copy them, add some stuff to them. Let me know any changes that you guys make for any of these decks that you're playing. But next up, we have a Blurple deck by Vinci Poo. I found this on Dreamborn. Shout out you. Blue, purple coming into this meta with some new cards like Sapphire Coil, which you can also utilize in this deck to make some good trades. I think Blurple is already a good deck in the meta, but what's cool now is you can play Popsicle on turn 1 with this color combination, because if you have your Bell Inventor, you can pop your Popsicle, play Bell, and then on turn 2 you can sing Friends on the other side. That's pretty good, singing Friends on the other side on turn 2. The only other color combo that really was doing that was like Cinderella Ballroom Sensation and Friends, and now you can do it with this Bell Apprentice Inventor, which is pretty nice. Part of me even wants to play a 1 jump ahead in this deck because you can sing it with the Bell as well, but I don't think that's necessary. I think we have more than enough ramp with our Tipo and our Sail the Azurite Sea. We're also playing 3 copies of the new Ana the Ice Blocker. This is a 4-cost inkable character, 2 strength and 3 willpower, which are my favorite stat lines, but she does quest for 2. She has support and an ability that says when you play this character, chosen opposing character can't ready at the start of their turn. I think that's pretty good. I think that has some decent potential. A little sad that this isn't an Amethyst card only. Like, it'd be cool if I could play this in other Amethyst decks, but the fact that she is a Blurple card, you're obviously limited to this Blurple color pattern. So I think you should utilize it if you are a Blurple enjoyer. Maybe test this card out. The idea that you can stop your opponent's character from readying is actually really powerful. It's really hard for your opponent to read into that. So sometimes you're just going to be trying to quest for game, trying to get some good value. And if you stop them for a whole turn, this early, like on turn 4, it's going to be a tempo shift because there's a world where you stop them from challenging your other characters. There's also a world where you stop them from singing their songs with that character. So this Ana has a lot of potential, I think. But it's not just the Ana that has potential. I think the deck is pretty good. So look out for Blurple going into the next set. Yes, the tier 0 deck that everybody is afraid of, that everyone thinks is going to be tier 0. Ruby Sapphire continues to just dominate the meta. Going to be one of the best decks again. Might even be the best deck of the format. There's a couple different ways people are playing this deck. This list looks a little non-standard compared to what we used to. Shout out Quantum Lorcana, by the way, for testing out some of these new cards. But I have been seeing people utilize some of these cards, like Unconventional Tool, which is a new 1-cost item. So you have more 1-cost items in this color combo. And this says when you banish this item, you can pay 2 less for the next item you play this turn. So this will let you play cards like Maurice's Workshop or Fishbone Quill just a little bit earlier. This looks like more of a item-heavy deck, but we're not playing any of those crazy cards like Oswald or anything like that. We're just trying to have enough items in the deck so that we have hits for our Scrooge McDuck, or so that we can pop them on turn 1 with Bell from what it looks like. Ruby Sapphire is probably the best deck that can take control of the board state and the best deck that can take advantage of Sapphire Coil. Now, this item is really good. You have to play, it seems like you have to play 4 of it in Ruby Sapphire now. You can't play it on curve with Ice Block the same way you used to. So against the whole Flynn Sisu thing, usually the situation you want to put yourself in against Ruby Amethyst was turn 1 Ice Block, turn 2 Tipo, so that turn 3 you can go Sisu Daring Visitor, use the Ice Block on the opposing Flynn Rider, and pop it. We don't have Ice Block anymore, so that curve is gone. However, you have Bell in the deck, which is going to contest Flynn anyways. But Sapphire Coil is basically like an inkable Ice Block. Once again, it's not 1 cost, but the fact that it's inkable means that it has a lot more use case in your deck as a resource, as well as a card that will put everything in range for Brawl and Big Sisu, and even Sisu Daring Visitor. Plus, playing multiple Sapphire Coils means that every time you ink once, you can lower 2 different characters by 2 strength, or even the same character by 4 strength. Fishbone Quill is going to let you do it multiple times per turn. Maurice's Workshop is going to let you draw a card every single time you play an item, and Tamatoas are going to grab back the items from the discard. I think this deck is tier 1, possibly even tier 0. If you've been playing Ruby Sapphire since the jump, now is your time. By the way, though, don't sleep on Dincon's build as well, the Din a Little Lord deck, the deck that played McDuck Manor, the Australian DLC winning deck, because I'm sure that deck gets better in the next format as well, and probably doesn't even utilize the new Bell situation. We have an Amber Steel song list created by Elias Abdulahad over here. Calls it Habibi Song. Shout out you for this awesome list. This is how I would probably play Amber Steel going into the new format. I really like the addition of Aerial Sonic Warrior in this deck because you're probably going to need some more damage removal cards that are not actions or songs, especially if people are playing Gontu in this upcoming meta. 2 copies of Gontu in this deck, like we were talking about earlier. This is going to stop the opposing player from singing songs, possibly making them pay 2 more for their items or their actions. It also stops you from singing songs as well. That is unfortunate, but I'm sure it's not the end of the game for you if you drop this Gontu on yourself, because really you're probably using it to stop a mirror match or something too. Plus, after that first turn it was played, you can start singing songs again, which is pretty good. We have Prince Naveen, which will let you play the songs for free, which is actually kind of nice because if you played this Gontu, then there's a world where you can just play the Naveen in the same turn and still use your songs. Ember Steel might be one of the few decks that can contest the new Sapphire Steel early game, you know, because you're also playing cards that can sing 3-cost songs on turn 1. Also playing Ursula Vanessa on turn 2 means you can sing Zeus the following turn, which is really strong against the new Sapphire Steel deck. Not a lot of item removal from what I'm seeing in these Steel decks, so not much Benja, Rise of the Titan, and stuff like that, but that a lot of those cards are probably meta calls. You know, maybe some of those cards you want to add into your deck, like as you start to learn what are people playing at my locals, or what am I going to see at this next DLC. You know what I mean? Next up, we have a cool yellow-green deck by Olerin. He calls it Turn 4 Win. This is an aggro deck that will let you win by turn 4. Not many new cards used in this deck aside from Baymax Low Battery, which is a 2-cost character. 3 strength, 2 willpower that will let you quest for 2. He does enter the board exerted, but I think he's pretty good for aggro decks like this. Now, I wanted to bring up this Amber Emerald combination, this color combination, because I do think this color combo gets better in the new format. It is going to be kind of hard to use aggro decks like this against Sapphire Steel when they play Bell turn 1, Sing Storm Rage on, right? But Daisy Duck is that card. She has 4 willpower, which will let you survive most of those interactions in the beginning. And maybe there's some other card combos in here that you can take advantage of and use for your yellow-green decks, like You Came Back or Gazelle. I've been seeing a lot of people toy with this color combination. There's a new upcoming set because we are getting the new Lady card. She's a dual ink Emerald Amber card that lets you basically add 2 characters with 2 cost or less from your discard back to your hand. And I think that could be good in a deck like this. I think this is supposed to be the most aggro version of this color combination, but there's a bunch of different ways you can build it. You can add Mufasa, you can add the Clarabelle package, you can also add some of the new characters from Lady and the Tramp, but we'll see how good aggro decks are in the upcoming meta, especially with all the new Sapphire Steel decks running around, right? Here we have an updated version of Diggy Hole by Dennis Sturm called Doggy Hole. I'd love to see that. We are playing the new Bolt. This is a shiftable character, 5 cost, inkable, 3 strength, 5 willpower, and has 2 lore. Has an ability that says whenever you ready this character, gain 1 lore for each other undamaged character you have in play. Some pretty high potential there. We're also playing Penny. This is a new 2-cost character that can quest for 2. Only for Amber Steel though. She's a dual ink specifically for Amber Steel. 1 strength, 2 willpower. When you play this character, you may remove up to 2 damage from chosen character, and that character gains resist +1 until the start of your next turn. This card's kind of good. I like that she quests for 2. She's only a 2-cost character, so she kind of like already is better than like something like Wendy Darling, because Wendy Darling's like a 2-cost Amber character. She's a 1/3, I believe, that quests for 2, but the -1 willpower is not that big a deal. And it has that extra ability to not only remove damage, but give resist to a character. That's pretty good. That's actually really good because you can start healing up your Smees, start healing up your Daisy Ducks if they've been taking damage little by little. We got 2 copies of Bolt, Headstrong Dog, 2/1/3 that says whenever this character quests, if he has no damage, you may draw and choose and discard a card. So some cool ways to filter out cards from your hand. Maybe you want to discard a Lilo from your hand because Lilo gets the ability from the discard pile anyways. And it wouldn't be Diggy Diggy Hole without the 7 Doors Mine. I think this card's still really good, especially going into a new Sapphire meta. Locations might be very powerful against them. Being able to utilize this location with cards like Happy, cards like Dock, so that you can gain lore, deal damage, and constantly draw cards with your Dock ability is going to be really what wraps this deck around in a nice bow. But this is probably one of the more consistent ways of playing Amber Steel, especially going into the new format. If you don't know what your meta is going to be like, I personally think that this has like an all-around good matchup against a lot of different decks that people are making right now. A huge shout out to Lorcana decklist for this green steel decklist. I look up to this dude for meta content on Twitter. I believe he has a channel too, so make sure to go follow them. I'll put the links in the description below. Lorcana decklist is a great player, so when he drops a decklist on Twitter, I pay attention, and I think this is the way Emerald Steel is going to be played in the new format. You know, we got the classic Diablo, Prince John, Ursula Deceiver of All package going on there, so you can sing twice and discard 2 or draw 2 and deal 4 damage. But really, really the card we got to talk about here is Pete the Space Pirate. This is the only new card we're adding to Emerald Steel. This looks very similar to Zan Syed's Emerald Steel list, if I'm not mistaken. But obviously we're playing 4 copies of Pete Game Jeffrey, but we have a new Shift Pete character specifically only for this color combo, mind you. 6 cost inkable, 5 strength, 5 willpower. Those are great stats, by the way. A Shift 4 Pirate, which means obviously on turn 3 you can play Pete. Your opponent can't play action, so on turn 4, your Pete's probably still going to be there. You can shift this right onto that Pete. And it has an ability that says, while this character is exerted, opposing characters can exert to sing songs, and your pirate characters gain resist +1. What the heck? It's two for one. So you're going to give all your pirate characters resist +1, including himself. So you're gonna have to deal 6+ damage to this character if you want to challenge it. And on top of that, your opponent just can't sing songs anymore. So Amber Steel players, beware for the Emerald Steel matchup. When they play that Pete on turn 3, you're not going to be able to use Strength of Raging Fire on it anymore. There's probably very little outs to that outside of character removal. So once they shift this Pete, no more singing songs for you, Amber Steel enjoyers. Wow, that's a really strong card. I think this is the way that Emerald Steel is going to go. To Benja, by the way, I want to point that out. I think Benja is also going to come back into this meta because you need to be able to pop items like Fishbone Quills, Maurice's Workshops, etc. Here's a really cool list by Ready Set Inc. Go check out their channel if you haven't seen their channel yet. They made a yellow-purple Madrigal deck. It's a budget song deck, so this isn't going to cost too much, a little bit less than $100. But that's because right now the TCG player prices are hyped. Most of these cards are common, uncommon, rare, outside of like the Lilo. But yeah, this is pretty cool. We have some cards in here that'll let you gain lore every time you play a song. Sleepy's Flute, Pepa Madrigal, and Alan Adale will all give you lore when you resolve your songs. And there's some pretty cool songs that we just got in this color combination for this deck, like the Family Madrigal, which will let you look at the top 5 cards of your deck. You add a Madrigal character and you add a song. So that's a +1 right there. That's pretty good. It's a 5-cost song, so it's a little hefty, but we can always sing that with Ariel, which is pretty cool. Some other new songs include This Is My Family. This is going to let you gain 1 lore and draw 1 card. It only costs 2 as well. It is uninkable though. It's kind of lame right there, so it kind of clump up your hand, but it's a song, so every time you play this, you'll draw a card, and if you have Alan Adale or Flute or Peppa, you gain the extra lore, so that's kind of cool right there. The new Mirabel Madrigal is a 6-cost dual ink character. That's a Shift 4. So the Shift 4 is very interesting, and whenever you play this character, you may return a song card that costs 3 or less from the discard to your hand. Basically add back friends on the other side. I think that's really what you want to do there. So if you have a friends on the other side already in the discard pile, then you can shift this Mirabel. There's a world where you play your 3-cost Mirabel, and then on turn 4 you sing friends with this Mirabel because she has evasive anyway. And then you can shift on top, and now your friends is already in the discard pile. But you have to quest with it too, so you have to wait a whole turn. And check out this new Isabella Madrigal. She's a 5-cost uninkable character, 3/3 stat line that can quest for 4. It's a kind of a running theme with Isabella. She'd be questing for 4, right? The Amethyst one can also quest for 4. Whenever one of your characters sings a song, this character can't be challenged until the start of your next turn. That's pretty intense. You can quest for 4, and then you can sing with any of your characters, and now this Isabella can't be challenged anymore, and she can only be targeted by stuff like Medusa and stuff like that, right? So pretty interesting deck. I don't know how confident I am in this being a meta deck, but the moment I saw this synergy between Peppa, Alan Adale, and Sleepy's Flute, like yeah, there's a deck here. There's for sure a deck here. Don't know how consistent it'll be or how aggro. The lack of removal is what scares me. There's not much in this deck that can move cards away from the board against the opposing board. So that is my #1 fear. But I do think there is something here, Ready Set Inc., and I do think that you can build a deck with this strategy of gaining lore every time you sing a song. So I like that a lot. Shout out to Madrigal, shout out Ready Set Inc. for this. I think Hyper Aggro is always going to be a good contender in the meta. We did get some new cards to help the Hyper Aggro strategy out, like This Is My Family, which we just said lets you gain a lore and draw a card. Some more lore burst right there. I want to talk about this Snow White, though. She's a 4-cost inkable, 2 strength, 2 willpower that says this character can't be challenged. And she quests for 2. So she can't be challenged at all. She only has 2/2, which is very weak. There is a world where you play stuff like Pride Lands and you move her into there and she has more willpower or something. But it's not my favorite card. But maybe it's good in aggro decks so you can just keep questing over and over again, right? But Hyper Aggro is still going to be relevant next format. Shout out Midgeburger for making this list. I wasn't sure like how to build Hyper Aggro. I don't think I would play Lantern personally. But you definitely want to take advantage of this Pascal. It's a dual ink yellow purple color card that is is an evasive 4 cost, if I'm not mistaken, and will let you quest for 3. But like I said, it's a dual ink card, so you can only play it in this package. But a 4 cost character that quests for 3, has evasive, and has 3 strength, 3 willpower. Kind of unheard of. Maybe you want to take advantage of this in your hyper aggro decks. I know a lot of people still play hyper aggro. I know a lot of parents who give your kids hyper aggro decks at locals. So make sure you add some new cards to their deck this week, right? Next up, we have a red-green Christmas deck by Boba Pete. Shout out you for having these awesome deck lists. I really appreciate this. I've been trying to build a green-red deck as well this format, but it's been kind of hard. It's been kind of hard to like really settle on the strategy, is what it feels like. But I really like where this one ended up. I like where this one has landed. I like the cards we're playing. Turn 1 Clairbo or Diablo, so that you can shift pretty early on. Shift Clairbo I think is very important for Emerald decks like this. You don't have a lot of draw power in some of these strategies, so being able to shift Clairbo is kind of important. And we're playing the Return of Hercules, so there's a world where we don't even need to shift Clairbo. We can play Clairbo on turn 5 with Return of Hercules. Now, if you don't know how this card works, to 5 cost action, both players reveal the card and play it from their hand for free. You, as the turn player, you're going to have to reveal your card first and play your card first. Then your opponent decides what character they want to play for free. However, when both characters hit the board, they land on the field at the same time. So any triggers that happen there, they both go into the bag. You, as the turn player, have to resolve your triggers first, pulling your triggers out of the bag, which means that if you play stuff like Tremaine, Maleficent Monsters Dragon, Hades, anything that can remove on play, you'll be able to remove your opponent's opposing character, which is why this list is playing Prince Philip. Prince Philip is a 9 cost evasive character. His shift 6, 6 strength, 6 willpower, quest for 3, and says, when you play this character, banish all opposing damaged characters. So you'll be able to play this for free off of your Return of Hercules. Any damaged characters get banished. You can combo this off with the new queen in this deck. We have a new queen. It's a dual ink queen. She's a 5 cost, uninkable, but it's a shift 3. So there's a world where you play this on turn 3, right? 2 strength, 6 willpower, but she says whenever another character is played, put a damage counter on them. So the combo is turn 2 you play Queen of Hearts, turn 3 you shift Queen of Hearts, turn 4 you probably do something fun like Robin Hood, because Robin Hood is a 4 cost character, turn 5 you want to play Return of Hercules from your hand, or maybe even quest with your Robin Hood and hit Return of Hercules from the discard pile, right? And if your Return of Hercules resolves while you have your Queen of Hearts on board, any character that's played on the board, yours and the opponent's, is gonna have a damage counter once the Return of Hercules is resolved. So what that means is any character played has a damage counter, and if I play Prince Philip, that means my ability will trigger banishing the opposing character. That's pretty cool. I like that. I even want to play Maleficent Monsters Dragon in this deck to basically do the same thing without needing the combo. And since we're playing Shift Prince Philip, we're obviously playing the 3 cost Prince Philip, which will quest for 2 and has Ward. This is probably one of the first decks that I think can really take advantage of Robin Hood. I've been seeing people trying to make Robin Hood Sharpshooter a real deck for the longest time, and I think we finally have some cool cards to make it a little bit better. The Return of Hercules is really strong. Personally, though, there's a lot of characters in this deck to make Robin Hood good. I probably want to add more action so that you can always hit off Robin Hood, right? And there's also a world where you play the Rush Queen, so you have more shift targets for this queen. We could also use the new Dual Ink Mad Hatter, which will let you draw cards as well, and in combinations. There's a lot of cards you can use to work within this color combo. So shout out Boba Pete for this. I like the deck list that you always post on Dreamborn, by the way. So thanks for this. I think it's a really cool way to start. I think it's a great place to start if you want to play red-green this format. Huge shout out to Alpha JBO, the homie out there from Florida. This is his Turbo Jafar deck. I've been seeing a lot of people trying to take advantage of the new Jafar support that we're getting in this set because we have a new 3 cost Jafar. We've always had Jafar Strike and Illusionist here, the 7 cost shift character that'll let you gain a lore every time you draw a card as long as he's exerted. But we have some new Jafar shift targets in this deck, like the new 3 cost Steel Jafar. The 3 cost Steel Jafar, this guy's name is Jafar Aspiring Ruler. If you're playing this color combo, you take out Crab for this card because he says when you play this character, chosen character gains Challenger +2. Yeah, it's not Crab. It doesn't give Challenger +3, but Challenger +2 is all right, especially if he can quest for 2. Plus, he's a Jafar shift target, and one of the better Jafar shift targets. I feel like most of the other Jafar shift targets are kind of subpar. This 2 cost Jafar just quest for 1, only has evasive on your turn. Nobody's really playing Diablo anymore, so it doesn't have the same amount of impact as it did back in the day. And realistically, I think this is your best Jafar target outside of maybe the Jafar Keeper of Secrets, I think his name is, the 4 cost. But for the most part, you also have another Jafar, the newly crowned. This Jafar, not my favorite. During an opponent's turn, when one of your illusion characters is banished, you may return it to the hand. Kind of specific. I don't think that's going to come up too often. So I would much rather just play the Jafar Dreadnought over this one if you really wanted more shift targets. But it doesn't even seem like you need that many shift targets because you're playing the Mickey Mouse Inspirational Warrior, right? So whenever this character banishes another character in the challenge, you can play a character from your hand for free. Possibly your Jafar Strike an Illusionist, which means you don't need to be shifting. In combination with cards like Last Ditch Effort, this Mickey Mouse actually might be pretty good. Last Ditch Effort will exert an opposing character and give one of your characters Challenger +2, potentially giving this Mickey Mouse 3 strength. Or there's a world where you play Mickey Mouse plus Jafar Aspiring Ruler, giving him 3 strength, maybe even 5 strength with this Last Ditch Effort. It's a combo deck. This is pretty nice though, and I like that you can take advantage of this Mickey Mouse, and your opponent might not be reading the Last Ditch Effort in the early games, but games 2 and 3, maybe they see you play Last Ditch Effort and they think I'm gonna play around that now. If you play Mickey, I am not playing a character that will get outed by Mickey, right? But still a pretty cool strategy. I've been seeing a lot of people try out a new Jafar Strike and Illusionist strategy coming into this new set, so maybe that's something you want to consider. And last but not least, we have a red-yellow Mufasa deck, Lily Fasa, actually. This was created by Humble. Shout out you, really appreciate you. Not too many new cards in this deck outside of Card Soldiers. I really want to talk about Card Soldiers, though. He's a 1-cost character that has 1 strength, 2 willpower, but says, while a damaged character is in play, this character gains +2 strength. So, on turn 1, he comes out as a 1 strength character. But on turn 2, if you play Mulan, if you play Mother Gothel, which you probably want to play them anyway because they're amazing Rapunzel targets, this Card Soldiers suddenly has 3 strength, and he can challenge. So it's not like Moana, the pirate, where she has 3 strength but she can't challenge. You can really take advantage of this card. Sometimes your opponent might get greedy and maybe they quest with their Cinderella, their brooms or something because they think he doesn't have a damaged character. Then on turn 2, you play your damaged character and boom, your Card Soldier now has 3 strength. It's kind of hard to play around stuff like that from my experience. Like, you have to assume they have it, right? But then there's certain situations where in the later game, if they play like double Card Soldier and you're thinking, man, if they have a damaged character in hand, that's 6 strength. You don't know. You're not going to know how to read that sometimes. So it's a card that can potentially take control of the early game because you're already playing damaged characters as your Rapunzel targets, and in the late game can potentially just have 3 strength against some of your locations or some of your low willpower characters, right? Red-yellow Lily Fasa has been a popular deck since set 1. A lot of people find success with this deck, and I do think it is a good deck. There's probably some more cards you can add to make it. There's probably a couple more cards you can add from the new set to increase that spice level a little bit, but this looks very consistent for a red-yellow Mufasa deck right now. It's looking like you have a solid game plan from turns 1 through 4, possibly setting up your Gaston so that you can play cards like Judy Hopps, Lady Tremaine, even Surfer Stitch turns earlier. But that's going to be all my Lorcana Goons for this video. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you've enjoyed the content. Links in the description below for all the deck lists that you've seen today. Good luck this weekend as we kick off the Archazia's Island format. If you're buying boxes, please post your pull rates in the comments below of our Market Watch videos. If you're playing any tournaments this weekend, good luck with any of these decks you decide to build. If you're playing any seal tournaments, there's a lot of content creators that have been making really good draft videos lately. Just want to point that out there. But starting this Friday, you're going to be able to play all of these new Archazia's Island cards in a tournament legal meta. So be sure to get them games in, practice your lines, practice the cards you want to play, get some testing so you know what cards to buy before the hype on the Market Watch. But until then, my Lorcana Goons, stay tuned to Lorcana Goons, and we'll see you next time.